In my work, I get asked a lot to help build digital strategies, digital playbooks, and I always start with the question of what do we mean by being digital? And I think being digital really comes down to two core attributes. And the first is speed. So if you think about what speed is about predictable excellence, being efficient. It's really our operational excellence capabilities and being able to scale those. The other attribute, which although it sounds similar, is distinctly different, is the attribute of agility. Agility is the ability to sense and make change happen. Sometimes small change, sometimes big change. And it's not enough for companies to be able to be one of those. And I think that's really the key from Amazon's playbook, is that you have to be both a world-class operator and deliver to customer expectations every single time, and you have to be a systematic innovator. You always have to be innovating. Understanding that those are two different playbooks is one of the unlocks that I help bring to an audience. I ran two different businesses there. I launched and scaled the marketplace business at Amazon. That's third party selling at Amazon.com. Today, that's well over 50% of all units shipped and sold at Amazon, about 2 million third party sellers. And I also ran enterprise services at Amazon, where we ran other large retailers, e-commerce infrastructure for them. A couple of key lessons from that. First, that was the third iteration. In 2002, as early as that is in Amazon's life cycle, it's the third iteration of a third-party selling strategy. I faced enormous internal resistance and competition from that. First, because we had tried it a third time. We had tried it twice before. Why is a third time going to make any difference? And the second was, I was introducing sellers that were going to compete with Amazon merchants, right? We were going to compete in books, we were going to compete in electronics, we were going to compete in home. So what are the lessons that we can take from this? First is that most of these are not really technical innovations by themselves, right? They're more or less something that benefits a customer and it changes a business tradition, and that inherently makes people uncomfortable. The second is, you have to be willing to stick with it for a long time. Today, we can't imagine a world without free everyday shipping, right? Most of us expect free reverse shipping, right? But at that point, it sounded ridiculous, right? It sounded counterintuitive. Bezos always says, if you're going to innovate, you have to be willing to be misunderstood, oftentimes for long periods of time. And so that's the last point is, it does take time for customer adoption to happen. So think about, what are the conventions in your business that don't favor the customer, that aren't really technical in nature, that would bring more trust for your customer and make the bet that over time, if it benefits the customers, you and your partners will win big time. I'm always testing my understanding of Amazon with current employees, with people who have just left. And what I find is the playbook is exactly the same as when I was there. And I think that's really the key for Amazon, is that although they're 10,000 times the size as when I was there, the way they approach their work, what they prize about leadership, their expectations for each other, how they work together, how they innovate, how they make decisions, how they use metrics in their business, is exactly the same playbook as when I was there. And that's the story that I've captured and that I bring to audiences and to my client work. What is your memory of life at Amazon about? It's about metrics. So a few things that I think Amazon does really well around metrics. First, we would spend more time when we were going to launch a new product, launch a new service, launch a new geography, launch a new category. We would spend more time defining what the metrics would be than we would actually what the new service, what the project was that we were launching. Why would we spend more time debating what the metrics were than actually what the specifications of the project were? The reason why is twofold. First is we knew no matter what we did coming out of the gate, it was never going to be the end game, right? It was never going to be good enough. But if the team had the right metrics, the right feedback relative to it, guess what? They were going to have the information, the vital feedback in order to evolve it. And the second thing is that if we spent time up front debating what those metrics were, we wouldn't have to pay as much attention to it as a leadership team going forward. We could let the team proceed more nimbly, more agilely, with more speed, because we knew they were measuring the right things. So that's one lesson, right? Spend more time debating what your metrics actually are. The second thing is, metrics sounds like a noun, but it's actually a verb, right? So metrics are about gaining insights and making change happen. So the entire cadence of your week at Amazon was about going to metrics meetings. You'd typically start on Monday with the distributed teams. By Friday, you were rolled up to the worldwide organizations, right? Every meeting would have a set of stakeholders debating a consistent set of metrics. What went right, but more what went wrong, and what were we going to do about it? It was all about accountability and action. What didn't work right? What are we doing to solve it? And that gets to the third thing, which is most organizations design their metrics to pat themselves on the back, right? Like, hey, we measure against averages, we measure against means and all that. At Amazon, it's all about finding the noise, right? Imperfections are the noise. It's about speed, which is getting to excellence, getting to perfection, right? So we would always focus our metrics on the 99th percentile experience, right? So always where the noise was, where things were failing. We were always making SLAs, service level agreements, out of key metrics that especially impacted customer experience. And every year, SLAs would take a notch up, right? You're never done striving for perfection relative to your core operational metrics. Amazon has 14 leadership principles, and I think the leadership principles and the consistency and application of those at Amazon is one of the real keys for how they're such a large organization today, but relatively non-bureaucratic and relatively nimble, with leaders at every point in the organization running their business. They always say at Amazon that the leadership principles are not a poster on the wall, that they're inserted into every meeting and everybody uses them, and people are evaluated relative to those leadership principles. And I think understanding that leadership is actually a set of practical skills. There are processes, there are mechanisms for how we have leadership, which is the things we do in order to get the results that we want. That's the key answer that the Amazon way and my discussions help bring to an audience.